So it's good to see everyone. How are you? I wanted to share with you some thoughts, and while this is important to celebrate, I wanted to start off by saying that I'm a big fan of Kim. From the outside, this may look like a business, but as far as I'm concerned, this is community service.
Yeah.
And if you know Kim and if you work with her at various levels, she is actually an individual who is truly committed not only to make individuals feel better, but the community feel better. And by the time I'm done with my talk, and then we'll try to do the check boxes on the various components, you'll see that she will check literally every box that is for a healthy living, healthy community aspect that I'll talk about. So, should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you must be thinking, why is a pulmonologist, intensivist who takes care of people in the critical care in the intensive care unit doing as a mayor? And why is this individual who's trained in public health serving as the mayor of a town? Well, the issue is, as I take care of patients, and unfortunately many of the times my patients are very sick and they're dying in the intensive care unit, my challenge is that I'm seeing them in the ICU, and every time I see them in the ICU, I ask myself a question: what could have been done to prevent that person from coming to the intensive care unit? And that conversation, internal conversation with my students, with my residents, and the training doctors, we go into the process, and then we realize that the diseases are happening in the community. And if the diseases are happening in the community, what do we need to do to prevent them? So that's part of our challenge that we have as a society. Now, let's talk about things that are not working well. In the last 2 years, and unfortunately for this year as well, the average age in the United States is decreasing. So we plateaued, and now we are dying a little younger. So our trajectory as a society is moving in the wrong direction. So we have to take some ownership. And we are spending so much on healthcare that almost 20% of our GDP goes into healthcare. So we as a society cannot sustain this ongoing cost of healthcare, because if we make a car, 20% of that is in the healthcare of the workforce. We cannot compete with Japan, China, Europe, or any other part of the world. So if we want to remain relevant in the world, we will have to actually start to live healthier. It's all connected to the whole picture. And that's probably important to realize, that we will have to take some ownership in this. So think about what are the things that people can do to be able to live and then be healthier. So there was studies that have been done by people. Centenarians, the people who live over the age of 100, you start to see some patterns across the world. You see what is it that they're doing that is allowing them to live healthier and longer. And right now, the way our situation is, in the last 20 years of our life, our age is decreasing, but let's say an individual makes up to the age of 80. The last 20 years, they're spending too much time in the doctor's offices. And in order to be able to take care of their health needs, whatever diseases or illnesses that they are living through, they have to be managed for that. So now, the ones who are living in a different capacity, in a different society, in a different part of the world, at times, they are actually living up to 100. In the last 20 years of their life, they are actually living. They're not spending the times in waiting rooms and so on and so forth. So, and that's something that you have to keep in mind. So keep that thought in mind. I'm going to bring it together from another angle. If today I said to you that I have a magic pill, and that magic pill will allow you to be able to live 20 years longer, have a 60% less chance of having Alzheimer's, 60% less chance of having cardiac disease or heart disease, or 60% less chance of having a lung disease, and you will be much more effective and stronger in your capacity, how much are you willing to pay for that pill? Think in your minds. People will say, well, if it's a pharmaceutical industry representative, they're going to say 100,000. But for others, you'll be able to pay a fair amount. And right now, the reality is that pill is available. And that pill is how you live your life. And this is proven. I'm not just saying it because it's nice to hear this, but the reality is that it is proven that if you live in a certain way, the chances of heart disease, chances of lung disease, chances of various other illnesses is going to be much less than what they are at this time in our society. Even Alzheimer's, dementia of various kinds, you can reduce that risk significantly. So if you're going to be working 2 days of the week just to be able to pay for that pill, maybe those 2 days could be used better to actually be living in a different way. And it's going to be worthy of that price. We have a pill mentality in a society because you turn the television on, a significant proportion is direct marketing by the pharmaceutical industry. So people come in, they say, we want a purple pill. Yeah. And so on. So because that industry is one of the biggest and they pay their CEO $72 million or so, or whatever it is. But that's where the industry has gone, so that we have been taught to think pill, reaction, problem, another pill, and then that's okay in some respects for some illnesses, but that is not how it is, because we are trying to find solutions, shortcuts to illnesses. So what did we learn from talking to all of the individuals who have lived over the age of 100 in various parts of the world? Fascinating thing is that there is one community in the United States that has lived at that level. Unfortunately, just one community, but across the world there have been many other communities that have lived much longer. And then interestingly, their patterns and their aspects of their life are very similar. I'll share them with you. One, being active in the life. No brainer. What does that mean? Well, there's a better understanding, and I'll say this phrase and you'll probably hopefully start to hear this much more. Sitting is the new smoking. If you took two individuals, one individual, and we are actually in our society in the computer age, we are sitting on the computers all day long. And as we are sitting on the computer, if there are two people who work together next to each other in a computer room, and they're working and doing the same work, one individual, after every 50 minutes of sitting, stands and walks around for 10 minutes, and another person does walking and exercise at the end of the day. For the same amount of time, 10 minutes plus 8 hours, for 80 minutes, that individual will actually exercise 80 minutes at the end of the day, and another person does it every 50 minutes or 10 minutes. The one who actually does it every 50 minutes is going to live longer. So that's actually, we have to remain active. It's a lifestyle. So many of the smart workplaces will actually have you stand up after a little while. They actually will make your workplace different. You will have your computers to be able to raise up the computer, and that would allow an individual to move around. They're creating and changing the workspaces so that people are actually living in a little bit healthier and moving their lower extremities and blood flow better in that way. So think about that in your minds, because it's a lifestyle that you have to look at. And everything that we do is going to have an impact. Our next generation, unfortunately, our children, they're watching television all the time. And that actually, what if you start to look at the things that our kids are watching on the television, it's all advertisements of sugary cereals, sugary drinks, and so on. And you'd be surprised how much there is. And now they've seen data of the channel that the children are watching and what's going to happen to their intake and their body mass index. So our children are actually, we have an epidemic of diabetes in our society. Our children, if all of you who are parents or anybody who's a grandparent, if you look at the next generation, you will be looking at them and telling them, guess what? You'll be living less longer than me. And that's not a good thing to think of, and that's not a good thing to say. So we have to figure out how to fix situations. And I cannot do it in the doctor's office. We have to do it in the society. And we have to change the culture, change the society, because this is no brainer. All of the things that I'm saying are going to be some things that you'll say, you know what, I knew that already, but now we have data to prove this too. So increasing activity, walking 10,000 steps, you would be better off. That actually can help you be more active. Changing your workspace and work habits would actually allow you to be able to walk much more, sit less, and that's going to strengthen your capacity and help your cardiac status as well. Other aspect to look at, number 2, is healthy eating. No brainer, we knew that. But what is the data and what does it show and what are the things that we need to do? So the salt consumption in our society, unfortunately, is about 3.5 grams in the United States. We should be eating 1.5. If you go across the Stop and Shop, nothing against them, try to get a snack which has a reasonable amount of salt. It's going to be tricky. If you go to a convenience store, getting a low salt snack is almost next to impossible. And then that's part of our challenge, is that we cannot get these snacks or places in various microwave foods and so on, that you will get the right amount of sodium that you can take. The amount is very high. You also have to look at the total consumption amount, the portion control. So the thought is that you have to have 1/3 of your stomach filled with food, 1/3 with water, and 1/3 with air or nothing. And then that's the other thing. Having green leafy vegetables is a smarter thing to look at, because what that does is it actually is much more healthier. The risk of cancers decreases. Colon cancer is decreased when you're actually having high fiber diet. Then other things in the food is if people have a glass of wine, red wine, or red grape juice at night, or during the day if you want, not the wine, during the day. You can actually reduce some of the changes and bring your HDL level up, and that would be helpful. It's commonly seen in the various people who have lived over the age of 100, and then that's the pattern that they have. And having a fistful of nuts without salt. You can have that in once a day, and that's actually is fat, but it's healthy fat, and that actually has been associated with healthier aging and living longer. So portion control, plenty of water, salt reduction, calorie count reduction, and then of course having nuts, a fistful of nuts, and a glass of wine. So those are the things that are in our diets can do this. There's more specifics that we can look into, but that's very simple. Now think of also aging as an inflammatory process. Inflammatory process means that now we have learned that, okay, heart disease is associated with inflammation. Many cancers are associated with inflammation. So having stress in life is associated with unhealthy outcomes. So let's go deeper into this. One of the things that they saw in the pattern of life of individuals was that if you are close to your family, you're going to do better. If you have a family that you're very close-knit with, which is your children, your parents, or it just is a healthier activity when you're actually in loving and caring family members. Well, that's how you're supposed to be, right? But it's what it does is it brings about a calmness in life. There's a relaxation. When you're close to your child, when they're not teenagers, you actually go and hug them, and then you just feel that, oh, this is like heaven. But that relaxation is associated with the reduction of inflammation in our bodies. So that's something that is very, very important, and it's something that is part of it. Now, another part is being a part of the community, having a purpose. So anyone who has a purpose that drives them to wake up and say, I'm going to do this today, this is my goal, it's a part of my bigger goal, example. And that actually is a very healthy thing. So something bigger than yourself, being a part of a community is very critical. And being whatever that community is, whatever that purpose is, that allows you to be able to stay healthier and then live longer in that manner. Then having a spiritual connection, and whatever that spiritual connection is, however you talk to that higher power, connect with that higher power, is healthy. And it's supposed to actually calm things down, because it gives you hope under stressful situations. You say, okay, there's a bigger power, there's a bigger, somebody is in control, and that is why this is happening, so I won't have to let go of some of those things. These are calming things which actually help our bodies. These are actually interviews, discussions with people across the different parts of the world of different faiths. In the mountains of China, in Greece, and other places, the people are actually saying the same thing. So it was very interesting to see this aspect. So we've talked about what we do with respect to our purpose in life. We've talked about our having a connection with the family, being a part of the community. What are the other aspects that are actually going to be important? So did you understand the connection with inflammation and the stress? That actually has a long-term impact on our health. So you know how people are stressed at work? All of us get stressed at work. It's how life is now. And then we go and watch a movie that is a very stressful movie. And then we actually have food which is actually just because the stress level is so high, our acid production is increased, so we actually have to have more carbs to try to see if we can control it, and then we get into this vicious cycle. And that's what we are living in many different ways. So watch a movie that's more calming if there's any around. and then spend time with the family, and then you can sit around the table and everybody can text each other. But those are some of the aspects that we have to look at as how we can have a purpose, have a bigger picture in mind. So these are essentially no-brainers. If you look at this is a no-brainer that this is what we need to do. Other aspects, well, tobacco, my enemy. I can tell you that the average age of individuals decreases by getting exposed to tobacco. I'll share with you some data, and which is very painful data. The life of a child in our communities can be determined by the distance of a tobacco outlet from the schools. I'll repeat it. If you go to any community, any school, and you look at the distance of that school, elementary school, middle school, to a tobacco outlet, you can tell what is the average age of that child going to be in that entire school. So that's actually pretty scary. So I'll tell you something also which is pretty sad, is that in our town of South Windsor, an individual has a capacity to live up to 15 years longer than a person in Hartford. Unacceptable. Our longevity in the United States, more so in Connecticut that I know of, is determined not by our genetic code, but by our zip code. So how do we bring about that? And because my argument is, right now we have this whole conversation and I go into these rooms and I have these passionate arguments. Everybody says, well, it's access to healthcare. I said, well, you have very good hospitals in Hartford, and you have good clinicians in Hartford. That's not the issue. The access to healthy living is our challenge. The access to healthy living. So if you go to a store in Hartford, try to get some healthy, local farmer produced food, vegetables. It's not going to be as easy as it is over here. Why? You're like 10 minutes away. So those are part of our challenges, is that the access to healthy living is being unfair. That is causing the healthcare costs to be impacted, the longevity in the communities to be impacted. Do you know, in Loma Linda, California, people will live 20 years longer than the town of South Windsor. So you add that up, people in Loma Linda, California will live about almost 30 plus years longer than somebody in Hartford, or 35. And this is because of lifestyle only. It's not about healthcare. And that's where it has to be a culture change in a society. How do we start to get the access to individuals? So tobacco companies are actually, I'm having this fight, I'm trying to get the average age of sale of tobacco or tobacco related products, the e-cigarettes, to be 21 in our town. And people are unhappy. They said we have a right to be able to do that. Fine, you have every right to do what you are, but you're increasing the cost of healthcare and we can't sustain ourselves in a society. So if you actually going to write on a bond paper that you'll not take a cent from the society ever about your health related choices you're making, go for it. But if we are all going to pay and we are not going to be able to sustain ourselves as a country, then we have a problem. And right now, the tobacco companies have said in their internal papers that if they can get our teenagers from a 15%, 15% to 40% to use tobacco, their stock prices will reach their goal. And they are actually marketing to our children. Again, this is a tough world that we live in, because whoever's invested in that stock, they want that stock to go up, but hey, not at the cost of our children. So those are the e-cigarettes that people are consuming. Some of them have more nicotine than a tobacco does, a cigarette does. And so that's so tobacco free is a critical part of that picture. Having other addictions is also associated with it. So any and all addictions actually are unhealthy. That's something to be kept in mind. So those are aspects that we have to look at for longevity. These are the patterns that we have seen for individuals who have had those issues. The other final thing is you need to still have health care. You cannot fight your genes. If you have family history of breast cancer, colon cancer, other type of illnesses, or coronary artery disease, you cannot fight all the way. You have to have other strategies to be there. So do your regular preventive medical management as well. These are the things that would actually allow us to be able to gain more years in our life. Simple as that. So I can stop here and then you can take any questions.
If you like, sure.
I would love to answer any questions.
It's like 5 minutes of questions. We can ask questions at the end too.
All right. Yes.
What time can we start drinking the wine?
Have it at breakfast.
5 o'clock somewhere.
Vitamin C. Thank you. Thank you so much. What an honor to be here. Thank you.